because I want to educate people about what happens after death and not to fear it so much.
Yeah,
The biggest...
that's important, actually. I really need to have more of those conversations with you because that's part of the treatment. See, I read a book, and it's called Radical Remission by Kelly Turner, and it was 1,300 cases of people that had overcome their cancer with no chemotherapy. And usually when this happens, what the doctors will do is they'll write down spontaneous remission or radical remission, but they won't actually file it, and it won't get publicized or anything by the doctors because for them it's a failure. It's a failure of modern medicine. Mm-hmm. That basically what happens is, I think that there's a specific type of person that gets cancer that we were talking about. It's a person that is serving everybody else, not serving themselves, overworking themselves, people pleaser.
Yeah. I realized another trick. This mind is so powerful. You know, if you think, I wonder if I'll get cancer, you're actually aware of what is causing the cancer. That's why you won't get it, because the cancer happens for you to come to that awareness. So when you are aware already, then you don't get it.
Yeah. So this is what I'm thinking is really going to help people to cure cancer, is by taking the subconscious approach and taking the medical research approach of there's 7 things that will cause people to have spontaneous remission and cure themselves from cancer. So, I mean, the basic things are the preference of your mind, right? Is your mind will always do what you think it wants. It loves visualization and thinks in images and pictures, learns by repetition, and the mind will always resist what's unfamiliar to return what is familiar, which is why most people in pain don't want to get off the mat, so-called as it was, mind, body, and health. So this is it, is out of 1,000 people that got spontaneous healing without any kind of chemotherapy or Western medicine, there were only 2 things, there were 96 traits that were common amongst all of them, but the most common boiled down to 9. 7 of them are mental and emotional, and only 2 of them are physical.
Exactly.
So the 2 that are physical are changing their nutrition and using herbs and supplements to strengthen the immune system. But like the real emotional ones are taking control of their health. That means saying the doctor is a bullshitter, and I'm not going to believe that his diagnosis of 2 years, I have something to live for. I'm not going to live for 2 years. I'm going to be the 1% that lives for more than 2 years.
Right.
And then focus on reasons for living. So that's exactly what you were saying, which we need to talk about more, is how is it that people can really conquer their fear of death and understand that death is really just a part of life and a natural process. Developing spiritual connection is another one of them.
An that inner connection, actually, that is the most powerful.
Right. To God. Yeah, exactly. And that's why I feel...
Because somewhere life is on your side.
Right.
And knowing is different from believing.
Right.
Knowing is absolute knowledge.
Yep.
And belief can still be shaken.
Yep.
So...
Not isolating yourself or embracing social support from others, developing trust of your inner voice and intuition, increasing your positive emotions and releasing suppressed emotions, which is my specialty, is releasing these suppressed emotions.
Releasing suppressed emotions can happen when you become aware of what you're suppressing.
Right.
And that can be done many ways, like through EFT or the other
RTT,
healing modalities.
Theta apparently
so
now.
You are actually on the right things, because all these things that you're telling me are what is true, what causes cancer, and how it can be healed.
Yep.
And like my landlady, when I met her, you can't believe what a self-abandoning, people-pleasing personality she had.
Wow. Yeah.
But now she's totally off it. Off it. And I could see that transition. And now she doesn't have cancer anymore because she changed that vibration.
Right.
So now she never abandons herself. She's always first thinking if, doing something will help her before she's going and helping others.
You make something else available to yourself.
Yeah.
People's limiting beliefs are really what kill them, because they think that they live in a box when they really live in this wide universe of abundance.
Yeah.
Right.
And when your thinking is so limited in the box, you are afraid of everything.
Right.
And those fears are what is causing the diseases and the cancer and all that stuff, right? The medical industry is a big business.
Yeah.
How much money do they spend on creating a doctor?
Right.
Like, just to study medicine, it's one of the most expensive careers.
Yeah.
And people think doctors are gods because they can, cure people, but it's not like that anymore. Doctors are robbers.
Yeah.
They're just looting you. They're looters. And the drug industry, like medicines, oh God. When I take drugs, like, I feel like I'm putting poison in my body.
Right.
When I was in the hospital, I am just so much smarter. That's why I could outsmart those doctors. When I was in the hospital for my asthma, oxygen, whatever, they were giving me these, what is that called? Nebulizers.
Yeah.
So one morning I just had breakfast, and what was for breakfast? Bread and jam.
Mm-hmm.
And half an hour later they came and took my blood, and then this doctor came to me and he said, I have bad news for you. I was like, what? And he said, you have sugar, you have diabetes.
Mm-hmm.
And in that moment I wanted to slap that doctor. If in my place, if it was somebody else, they would have believed that doctor, because diabetes is such a common disease. Every second person has diabetes nowadays. So any doctor can bullshit you with that and you will believe him.
Yeah.
You know what I told the doctor? I said, I cannot have diabetes. I know my body.
Mm-hmm.
I was the one telling, I never checked if I have diabetes or not. And I told him, you took my blood half an hour after I had bread and jam, and you're coming and telling me I have diabetes?
Yeah.
You take my blood tomorrow morning, and then you come and tell me I have diabetes.
Right.
I said this to the doctor.
Right.
And the next morning, they came and took my blood, and he came back to me and he said, you don't have diabetes.
Right. Yeah.
But imagine that doctor almost bullshitted me.
Well,
and he would have put me on a whole therapeutic journey of diabetes.
It was Bruce Lipton and I.
What?
Right?
Where was that?
This was at the Advanced Medicine Conference. There were 40 people in the room, and everybody in the world should have been there who needed to know about non-Newtonian medicine. It was incredible. He just went on for 2 days.
So Bruce Lipton, talks about the telomeres, like today the lady was talking. So he talks like, you have this railway track, imagine.
Right.
And your telomere is the last part of the DNA.
Last part of the DNA.
Right. So
responsible for aging and timing.
See, so when you're young, the train goes until here, and then this telomere is the railway track. It keeps increasing itself, and you keep, you are young.
So that's basically my life's work right now, as I'm trying
that's
to
great work
patient.
you're doing,
Well, the problem also, too, is I'm such a spiritual person as well, I found, is that when I do work on people that are not of the faith, that have, like, those lies that they believe about themselves and things, they'll directly attach to me. I've had it happen because I'm an empath. One time I did on a non-Christian, basically, I had somebody call in, and I didn't have time to really pray about it. I pray about most of my sessions. And she was like, I don't believe you that what you can do, I don't believe you can hypnotize me, number one, and I don't believe that what you do works. So she appealed to my ego in that moment, and I was really looking for work at that point. So I said, okay, give me about 20 minutes and I'll give you a demonstration of what it is that I do. I gave her a 20-minute demonstration, took her back to her happiest memories. She ended up getting a lot of it, but her depression somehow attached to me even through the computer. I crawled into my bed and wanted to shoot myself. And I realized that this wasn't me. And so I started meditating and I started praying and I said, God, I surrender this to you. This isn't of me. And then it lifted. So ever
Yeah,
since
see,
then, I've known.
it lifted. You can think of it as meditation, but that happens because
Working in trance is dangerous because
you
you
have to protect
contact the
yourself.
spirit realm.
Yeah, you have to protect yourself.
Yep.
That's true. And you can protect yourself with light,
Mhm.
any form of light, like white light or golden light, purple light. You know, they all you attach meanings to them, and that's what I do. Like when I lived in all these dangerous places like Venezuela, Nigeria, people would be shocked, you know, and all I did was I would just surround myself with light.
Right. Yeah.
And
It's
I
the person that's dark and the person that's worried that's going to get mugged.
Exactly.
The person that's
so
at
you
low
see
vibration.
Devil, Satan,
Right.
these are just low vibrational programmings that attack you, that can have power over you when you are worried and in fear, because the whole concept of
But
devil
something's
and Satan,
keeping you in slavery of it, like, you know, the thing that's
Exactly.
ultimately
So
three
what-
generations back.
So what you think as
These are low
Satan is
vibrations.
basically just an evil programming. It's a program.
I can
Like
agree.
DNA is a
I can agree
program.
with that, and Satan gives it a personification.
Exactly.
But those things, those lower
There.
programmings, do keep you from your
they
higher
are
consciousness.
in the astral levels, you know. If you can eliminate this whole personification of Satan, and you can just see it as a contrast, it won't have as much power as it has when you call
Right.
it Satan.
Yeah, it only has power when you give it power.
Exactly. And
So
when
the
you
other
call it
part
like that,
spiritually
when you
is
say
that you-
Satan, it can hurt you, it can take your soul, you know, and you need to save your soul. It just gains more power, and religion speaks like that. But when you can eliminate that whole concept of Satan and you can just say, okay, this is a low vibrational programming, and you can overcome that vibration by increasing your vibration, then even Satan, you know, if I do black magic on somebody, it doesn't necessarily have to affect them. If they have a very low vibration, then that black magic will really harm them. But if they have high vibration, that black magic won't even touch them.
Right.
Because black magic is a very low vibrational energy program.
Yep.
And whenever I believed that, you know, that thing, I was in Nigeria. Every second person does black magic there to
Yeah.
manipulate each other. Black magic is nothing but manipulating energy. You can call it Satan, you can call it devil, you can call it evil, anything, but black magic is basically manipulating energy.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a very low vibrational thing because you cannot manipulate, you should not manipulate anybody against their will.
Yeah.
So people who practice black magic, they actually become victims of their own
Yeah.
black
Right.
magic.
Sure.
So they are also very low vibrational beings.
Mhm.
That's why they think that harming someone else and getting money from it actually, you know, is good. So those people are Satans. you
Yeah.
know?
They can accept
So this is
themselves.
programming, this, that, and being an empath is not easy because at some point you start taking the burden of the whole world,
Mm-hmm.
and
Yep.
it can get really heavy.
Yep.
And at some point I started feeling that heaviness, and I realized first
Ow! Oh.
I need to take care of myself.
Yep.
You know, so I used to be a very strong empath before, but I think one of the biggest challenges of empaths is to align our energies. So like you said, you were trying to heal that person and you became depressed. That happens to me all the time
Mm-hmm.
because I'm a very strong empath,
Mm-hmm.
and
Yeah.
I take on other people's pain too much,
Yep.
that I start living their lives.
Yep.
And that's not good.
No. Mm-mm.
So at some point you have to detach from that and you have to ground yourself. So
That's
you
I
can
deal with
do
is
your
I give
work.
it back to God, and
Yeah, you can
I say
do
this
your
is.
work.
I would rather take on your yoke than have to take on the world's, because that's not my responsibility.
Exactly. It is not your responsibility to save anybody. Serving is different.
It's also
But if
not
you
having
think-
faith in something higher than myself.
Exactly,
too,
because
to
you
take
see,
care of it.
everybody is
Right.
born with their own consciousness.
Yes.
So even
And they
the
make
fact
choices.
that you think
Everybody
exactly,
makes choices.
even the fact that you think you need to save someone, like most healers,
Mhm.
what they do is actually what they need to learn.
Yep.
So when we are actually saving others, what we really need to do is
Save
save
ourselves. For most healers, yes.
Yeah, that's why we take on the healing job, because you know
Yeah.
We
Yeah, I
feel
was
the
told that
pain,
by a higher dimensional being before I started this. She said that's a choice you make.
Yeah, and
You
we
don't
feel
have
the
to.
pain,
Yeah,
and then we want to release others
right.
from that pain,
That's true.
right?
Yeah.
So usually we treat others the way we want to be treated. So basically we are looking for that same compassion and healing and stuff from others.
Right.
So maybe somewhere we didn't get it. So now we want to give it to others. So
Yeah, but it's a really
better
bad.
that
That's a
we
really
give
toxic
it to
thing.
ourselves first.
Yeah, it's
you
a
know?
really toxic thing.
So there
most
was
of
this
us.
time I did nothing. I became the most selfish person in the world.
Yeah.
And I stopped helping anybody.
Mm-hmm.
I just stopped communicating. Like I became the most selfish person. And I was so happy to be selfish, like for once.
Oh yeah.
I
spent
taking
20
care
years of my
myself.
life being selfish. It was the other way around.
That's the other way of
Yeah.
selfishness.
Yeah.
That's when you were not aware. That's
Right.
when you were
Yeah.
not awake.
Right.
But being
Right.
selfish in an awakened state
Yeah.
was when I was finally learning how to put boundaries.
No, it's
and
very
not
good.
Get lost in everyone's
Right.
stories.
That's exactly where I am right now, actually, is like, I just, for weekends and weeks at a time, I'll just be selfish and be like, nope, this is my time. I don't care. I'm not gonna, I do care, but I'm not gonna care. I'm not gonna, force myself to not care.
And that is very necessary because
It is.
empaths are eventually going to save the world. Because we don't need more narcissists, because narcissists
That's right.
are ruining the world. So
Yes.
that's why empaths come. They balance out the narcissist energy.
But even the narcissists too, again, doubling back on your conversation, they're people who really deserve the most compassion because they were never given any sense of self.
But the narcissism is more like a destructive form of things. So if you feel empaths whose energies are not aligned, they always attract narcissists in relationships.
That's right. Yes.
So why
Absolutely.
does that happen? Because empaths are natural givers and narcissists are natural
Yeah, that's my
takers.
business partner.
So that's complementary,
Yeah.
right? So that thing, narcissists need compassion,
Right.
but they don't need you.
Well, they need
sacrificing in the
They need
relationship.
narcissistic supply, and they're not in any way.
And they are supplied by the empath. If
Right.
the empath would stop that supply, then the
Yeah.
empath would actually help the narcissist to become a better person. Because if the narcissism is not fed, then eventually the narcissism will stop.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean you don't be compassionate with them. You have to be compassionate with yourself first. So if you keep giving the narcissist who keeps taking, he doesn't have your best interest at heart.
Right.
So if you keep giving, then you are self-abandoning. So you also don't have your own best interest.
That's right.
Because that is a toxic relationship.
Yeah.
So once an empath learns how to put her boundaries and put her foot down and do more grounding,
Yeah.
then the empath can move on from narcissistic relationships to healthier relationships.
Yeah.
I have a
Absolutely.
video about this. It's called Why Empaths Have a Hard Time in Relationships. It's because empaths are always operating from the higher chakras, but we are in the physical dimension. We have to learn how to balance our lower chakras, because if we don't know how to do that, we will never be able to be grounded in relationships.
Right.
And to be grounded means to know how to put boundaries, to know how to say no.
Yeah. That's right.
Because we don't know how to say no, the narcissist takes us on a ride.
Yep.
So that is the hardest lesson for empaths. So I have that video called Why Do Empaths Have a Hard Time in Relationships? And when I released that blog, I think I had so many people come and tell me that they could so connect with it.
That's awesome. Yeah.
And narcissists need to connect more with their higher chakras. But that is an awakening that empaths already come with.
It's so painful for the
their
narcissist, though, too.
It is.
Like, there's not really a whole lot that can help the narcissist, honestly.
Exactly. Like
And
my
the problem
dad,
is because they never received a sense of love themselves.
Yes.
So they had to decide that there was only them and only they mattered.
Yeah.
And everybody else had to supply the delusion that they were the only ones that
And
mattered.
narcissists actually come from very painful pasts. Like
Yes,
my
they do.
dad.
Your body can heal itself, and you can command it to heal itself through cell command therapy. You can just ask your cells to heal themselves and say, this is not my natural form of being.
That's what I did with the
That's
asthma
Dispenza
after I
did.
saw the monstrous doctors trying
Right.
to rip me off with all my...
Yeah, well, you took
all
control of
those
your own
things.
health. Just
Yeah.
like point one of my research. Yeah.
I realized I could not rely on those monsters anymore. Anyways, if you wouldn't get angry and if you wouldn't show anger, then
Well,
your partner...
then you're basically a false peacemaker in the
Exact false
relationship. Is
peacemaker,
you're like,
that's the
I'm just
word.
gonna
Yeah.
I'm just gonna acquiesce to you
Yeah.
rather than actually showing
Unless you
righteous
have
anger.
no reason to show anger.
So I do. Have you heard of Gestalt therapy?
No.
So I've had many. I've been the father many times to many of my clients, and what I'll do is I'll bring them into a room and I'll bring the person that they hate, as long as it wasn't an aggressor that they didn't know. Because the interesting thing is our minds are so powerful, they know the minds of other people. And if you've sat in your pain, you've also sat in the solution halfway. So you've thought, my mother is this way because she never got attention from her father, because da-da-da. But sometimes you're so angry you can't see that. So I'll bring them into the room and I'll tap on their head every time and I'll say, ask your mother why she didn't love you when you were a child. Answer your daughter. Answer your mother. And they'll have the whole fight. They'll scream, they'll laugh, they'll cry, they'll do everything. And it's the exact same thing you're saying, but it's safe.
Yeah.
And they don't need to actually do it in front of the person,
but they
because
can
it's
do it
more
in their
what it
mind
was
and
for
it
you.
Changes.
Exactly. It's amazing.
But you're not doing it physically, you're doing it mentally,
Right.
and somewhere you feel acceptance for it, and suddenly you don't feel the need to be aggressive anymore.
Absolutely. Anger. I love my favorite part of anger, but the scariest part is when I'll tell somebody I'll be like, we do something called role function purpose. And they're like, I don't understand. They'll come in and they'll be like, I don't understand why I'm so angry. And he's a guy in the military. He'd been blown up 2 times. He thought it was because he'd been blown up. We went into regression and we found out it's because neither his mother nor his father gave a goddamn about him. And he blamed himself for his mother leaving, when really his mother leaving and his father not being able to stop the mother from leaving weren't any of his problems. But as a child, he believed it was his problem, because the night that she left was the night that they went to get pizza. And he always said, if I hadn't gone to get that pizza, Mommy wouldn't have left. And he was stuck in that, And then finally, like, the parents came in who had beaten him and broken his jaw and all these things. And I said, I want you to scream at them. Just scream holy hell. And those screams are so blood curdling. They come from the center of the soul. I just have to, I usually have to cover my ears. And first I'll check if anybody's in the office, and they will scream so fucking loud. There's something coming out. And I'll do it again. Keep on doing it. I push my clients and I'm like, are you crying right now? Cry harder about it, because this is your catharsis. This is your moment to fully feel what you have not allowed yourself to feel for 20 years. Right. And they go through it, and it's just good. It's a beautiful thing.
I'm just having this thought that this conversation that we are having right now, just this discussion, is so good that anybody who listens to it can benefit from it.
Yeah.
If at some point while I'm still in LA, we can sit one day, maybe.
Sure, you should do the whole RTT session and see what you find from it.
No, not just I will do that, but what I mean is we should sit and have a similar conversation again, but we should tape it.
This is being taped. You told me to tape it.
You're taping it?
Yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Awesome!
Yeah.
Can you give it to me later?
Sure.
Yeah. We should tape it, and I also want to make a video, like a video conversation maybe later on just healing modalities, because I have these YouTube channels where I put all these videos, and I want conscious people to talk about all these things. I don't want spiritual people to just come and talk about light and love and that stupid self-abandoning, self-sabotaging things. I want people to talk about anger and about these mental exercises and everything, so people can connect.
We should talk about like what we were talking about earlier, even too, the King's Cross therapy, about the amazing things that you can do to come against the voices in your head and things, all these things that are just
Yes.
amazing, where people are actually pushing the envelope forward, not only in consciousness, but in actual mental wellness that actually works.
Yes.
Because
Because
I have two
as
clients out
feeling
of 35 that haven't
we-
gotten results.
right,
Two.
right.
And they're my family. And the reason they didn't is because they didn't believe that I could do it. Because
Exactly.
they're related
family
to
is
me.
the hardest.
they're the
It's
hardest.
last-
They're the worst.
yeah. So this thing, like always it is these midnight discussions that are the best.
Oh, yeah.
If you can have that,
Absolutely.
it doesn't always come up, but when it does, it's so transformational.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
I want to put this, because this is also part of my work. Like, you do it in a more structured way, where you have all these methods,
Yes.
RTT and hypnosis, and this.
Yeah.
Mine is more like from a emotional level, where I'm
Mhm.
going on these, because I don't do one-on-one healings.
Right.
What I do is more like speaking to a group,
Yeah.
or making a video on my YouTube channel.
Right.
So where I talk about these things, right? So we
Yeah.
can,
And I
have a
don't
video.
consider myself a healer too. Just a vessel for higher level spirituality in the end.
No, I think healer is a very
It's a loaded word.
no. I think healer is a low level of spirituality,
So do I. Yeah.
because
Because it's
you
saying
don't
something's
heal
wrong with you and I
anybody.
need to
Exactly.
fix you. People heal themselves.
Yeah.
I'm just a guide. That's all I do. Is I ask the right
You are
questions.
the tool, like you're a catalyst to the healing,
Yeah,
nothing
I'm
else.
more of a detective,
Yeah,
honestly.
exactly.
But I help them to put together the pieces of their own
Yeah,
puzzle.
and if there is another
brokenness.
level to healing. If you believe that you are healed, like you are whole
Yeah.
and complete,
Right.
that you don't need healing,
Right.
then the whole modality of healing is like, we have problems, we need to be healed.
Yeah,
You
that's
know?
the crazy thing about psychology too, is that
It creates
we've created
problems,
so
and
much of
then
our own. Well, that's the interesting thing, as I've said for years. Boy, that's a really interesting problem for you to have created for yourself, right? Because it's like, before you label something, it's not limited. Before you label
Yeah.
something, it's not put in a box.
Yeah.
It's your BS is what limits you or expands you, right? Your belief system, BS.
Yeah, bullshit.
Right.
Basically. So one of my life mission is to purge all these dysfunctional belief systems. Do you know about that frog venom?
Oh yeah, combo frog. Yeah, I met a guy that
I've heard
administers it.
about it, but I don't know much about it. But I know that
That's dying, I think.
that
I think
venom
it's, yeah.
actually initiates you, for a lot of people who are really deep asleep. It can initiate their spiritual awakening.
Yep. Yeah, I know. I've heard. But don't you think that it's because it's like a near-death experience and such a shock to the body, but in a positive way?
Yeah, you don't die from it, but
Right.
it takes you to
You don't
that.
die from it, but it makes you feel alive.
Do
Because
you know
near-death
what is
experiences do.
psychedelic? Do you know what is ayahuasca?
What is ayahuasca? Yeah, it's DMT in it.
And
Right.
what is DMT?
They call it the spirit molecule. I read
But
a
where
short
is
documentary.
it? It's in
It's
all,
in the brain. It's in all of us already.
it's in all of us. So you
Sure.
know it already. So
Yeah.
whenever we have an accident,
Right.
DMT is released,
That
because
makes sense.
it's like a cushion.
Yeah.
Right, so we immediately detach. Like, a lot of people, when they have accidents, they have out of body experiences. They leave their bodies, they see their bodies from
Or you
top, but
see your
they're
life
not
flash
dead
before
yet.
your eyes,
Yeah.
right, in moments,
So
or
there is a
time
slight,
slows down before
yeah.
you hit the car in front of you.
There is a slight difference between out of body and near death experiences.
Mm-hmm.
So near death is when you actually go to the other side, you meet spirits, you are told it's not your time, you come back. But out of body experiences, you don't meet spirits, you don't go to the other side, you just leave your body.
Yeah,
You
right.
get
It's astral
disconnected.
projection kind
Astral
of stuff.
project. So that happens with DMT. So
Huh.
basically,
Okay.
they are DMT, when it is released in the brain.
Yeah.
You can have an out of body experience, basically.
Mm-hmm.
So what happens to these people who smoke DMT is basically they are having that out of body experiences, and they are seeing. So some people actually have negative experiences while on DMT, because you don't know on which plane, astral plane, you are going, and you are not, half the times you cannot control it.
Yeah.
So some people have had bad experiences even with ayahuasca. So DMT is not like it doesn't harm you, but unless you have a life-threatening situation, like let's say you have terminal cancer,
It shouldn't
and you're
occur
suffering, then
unnaturally.
you can take ayahuasca and ayahuasca is mild. It has very little bit of DMT. People who smoke DMT directly, that's like ayahuasca may be a 5-hour experience, whereas DMT is like a 5-minute experience. So you literally happens it like so fast that you're totally out of control. You detach, you go on the other side, you have all these experiences in 5 minutes, 10 minutes, you're back.
Yeah, I broke my wrist in the Grand Canyon, and I experienced like that when I was in the hospital ambulance.
Whoa, tell me about it. You have something with your wrist? Because I've seen your hand like a little... You've had an accident?
I had an accident in the Grand Canyon. I was on a boat full of 18 people, and it was rapid day, so I decided I was going to ride at the front of the boat. So I was like straddling this thing, and I had gloves on, and there was a rope, and everybody had their feet on the rope, so the rope was so tensioned that when the boat hit like this rapid and fell off of the shelf, my body went up, but my wrist stayed down, and it wrenched it out and went like this. So it was like this. And my dad was thinking quick, so he scissored his legs around me so I wouldn't fall off of the boat and have to be rescued wrist to wrist, which would have been tremendously painful. But I would have had no choice. They would have had to do that. It's my dominant hand. And his friend put his arms around him, and then I had to be helicoptered out of the Grand Canyon and taken to Flagstaff, Arizona in an ambulance. But I can vaguely remember that I felt like I was looking at myself from in back of the technician.
You had an out-of-body experience?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So it was a very severe
trauma.
Fracture.
Yeah, fracture. It was 16 bones were broken.
What?
So that's the reason why this was a pin coming here, 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 and here, coming around here. And I was just about to go to drum camp, and that would have changed my life, because I probably would have become like a professional drummer instead, because that was my passion. And I was going to the Berklee Summer School of Music, and this is where they put the camera in, and then they put more pins here. I have all the pins so I can show my kids someday. I kept them. So
you know what, do you still have any more pain or discomfort from that wrist, or has it completely healed?
It's pretty completely healed, except for that I stretch the tendon when it happens, so I can't separate these two fingers very easily. Other than that, pretty good. This one I broke my finger, and I never had a pin, so because I want to be able to play the drums. So, but other
how
than that,
did you break the finger?
A kid's back landed on it while I was wrestling him. I have lots of scars because I have problems with scar tissue.
When I talk about all these things, a lot of men do get intimidated, because it's a kind of very strong inner power that men like to have their power over women.
Yeah, I hate it. Like when I start dating again, I want to date like a professor or somebody that has something equal to contribute, to conversations and things like that. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Somebody who has their own personal power,
So I always believe that you should share power in relationships.
Right.
You should never try to have power over somebody.
Right.
Because the moment you do that, even if I try to have power over you, I will lose in the process, because
both people lose.
Both lose.
Yeah,
exactly.
Right.
So you should never try that. So, anyways,
but it's kind of a natural part of relationships too, is that power struggle. If people are not highly involved enough.
That's why they're called power struggles, because that's what kills all relationships.
It is.
And the concept
or births a new respect for each other because you let go of the power struggle that is inherent.
Yeah, so. And the concept of power struggle, I think, comes from this concept of, I don't know.
Some of it comes from patriarchy. It just
and
depends on the
religion.
relationship
And
and
the
the
lot
people.
comes from religion.
But I think it also comes from nurture too, like your parents. Like
Exactly. You know, sometimes all that compassion is not good.
yeah, no, that's very true.
It's
A
good
mirror
at
is
some
better.
level because compassion has
Yeah.
a very high vibration.
Right.
But you know, if I tell you that what Mother Teresa did is at a spiritual level, it was a huge amount of self-abandonment.
Mm-hmm.
Mother Teresa loved everybody. Okay, she was a nun and everything, you know, and the world looks at her as this, you know, mother of all children and everything.
Right.
But in many ways, she was escaping, you know, and of course, like, if I say that, people are not ready to accept that level of thinking, you know, but extreme compassion is also not good.
Mm-hmm.
Extreme giving.
Right, because you have to ask yourself, everything that you do to others is kind of a projection of yourself too.
And
So,
you, at some level, you believe you don't deserve to get.
That's correct. Yeah.
So giving and receiving is the dance of life. If you are just giving and not receiving, you know what can happen to you. Maybe we can end this with this little story. You've heard of Elizabeth Kubler-Ross?
Mm-mm.
So she was one of the pioneers who did research on what happens after death. This was during the Second World War. She was a physician.
All right. So Elizabeth Kubler was a pioneering physician. You were saying.
She used to hitchhike, you know, to different states during the Second World War
Sure.
to give medical aid to patients who were Holocaust survivors.
Okay.
And she started meeting a lot of people with cancer and children terminally ill, you know, and they would bring this wisdom from the other side. And she wrote this book called The Wheel of Life, and a few other books. And if there was one message that she wanted to give in her life lived, was that death does not exist. So that was her message.
Mm-hmm.
And she also had all these epiphanies, and this, she saw spirits who came and told her this was her work, everything. Anyway, so I'm going to talk about Elizabeth's mother.
Mm-hmm.
So Elizabeth's mother was an extremely kind-hearted, generous, helpful woman.
Mm-hmm.
She gave to everybody. She fed everybody. She loved everybody. And Elizabeth always grew up to learn that the epitome of compassion was her mother.
Mm-hmm.
She really loved her mother. So one day she went to visit her mother, and her mother was fine, in great health, everything. But her mother told her that if I ever become a vegetable, please end my life, because I don't want to die an undignified death.
Yeah.
basically.
Okay.
And Elizabeth was like, Mom, why are you saying this? Like, you are not going to become a vegetable, you're fine. And maybe the mother had a foresight or some kind of premonition.
Mm-hmm.
Because a week later she fell down or something happened, and she broke some special bones in her body that made her a vegetable. Basically, she couldn't move anymore. And she was totally paralyzed. And Elizabeth was shocked. She came back to her mother, and her mother was pleading with her eyes to Elizabeth, like,
Wow.
end my life. But Elizabeth had done so much research on death by that time that she just could not do it for her own mother. She could not kill her. Like mercy killing, euthanasia,
Yeah.
it's okay. It's not bad, but Elizabeth couldn't do it for her
Right.
mother because she knew her mother had to meet her natural death. And at some point, Elizabeth believed that she was a physician, right? And she was doing all this groundbreaking research, and she was trying to cure her mother. And she believed that she could bring her mother back to life. I think either she was a vegetable or she was in coma, something like that.
Okay. Yeah.
And her mother was like that for 4 years. And her mother's health never improved. Eventually, her mother died. Like, she never came back from that comatose or whatever experience.
Mm-hmm.
And Elizabeth was angry with God. She could not understand why God would inflict so much pain. In those days, religion was very strong. She was like, her mother was compassionate, generous, such a nice. She believed her mother was an angel. So Elizabeth could not believe why God would inflict something like that to a person like her mother, who was so loving, so kind, so generous, so giving, that would have to suffer like that. And she, till the end of her life, she was angry. She couldn't understand and she wanted to know the answers. And Elizabeth had a lot of visions, like from angels, from spirits, because she was doing this death work, right?
Mm-hmm.
So one day she was in the lift. I think she met a spirit in the lift, like elevator.
In an elevator. Mm-hmm.
And or she had a dream or something, and she saw the answer.
Mm.
You know what the answer was?
Mm-mm.
God, or whoever was the answer. So you talk about grace.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not a religion thing, but I will talk about grace here.
Sure. Mm-hmm.
So God actually had grace for her mother.
Mm-hmm.
Her mother learned everything, but her mother did not learn how to receive. And in those 4 years that she had become a vegetable,
She was given care,
she had no choice
but to
but
take care.
at the soul level, she had to learn how to receive.
Wow.
So a lot of people who are just giving and giving and giving, it is not always coming from a place of just compassion or helping.
Right.
A lot of it is because they have a problem in receiving.
Mm-hmm.
They believe they don't deserve or they cannot receive. They just can't receive.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And Elizabeth's mother did not know how to receive. And God actually told her that if she did not have that accident, if she did not have that 4 years of
She wouldn't have learned.
coma,
Right.
she would have given herself, her mother would have given herself another lifetime where she would have been either born handicapped or paralyzed or something like that. And this 4 years lesson
Mm-hmm.
would have been an entire lifetime's lesson
Mm-hmm.
to learn how to receive.
Mm-hmm.
So she actually received grace and she did that lesson in 4 years,
She did.
which she would have had to do in 60 years or 80 years in another lifetime. So she had grace because she did a lot of other things, she learned a lot of other things, but she didn't know how to receive.
Yep.
So,
Sure.
giving and receiving should be balanced. If you are giving too much and if you are not receiving, then you should stop and you should start receiving. And a lot of people in the modern age spirituality, whatever, like give. And that is not good.
Yeah. And I tell my clients that giving and receiving is a balance of, it's like breathing.
Everything needs to be
Try
balanced.
just exhaling and you're giving. You're giving. How long is this going to work? How much can you give before you have to receive,
Yeah.
But yeah, I could use that lesson. I don't receive.
Yeah, I
For
tell
what
this
I
story
do.
to a lot of people because
Yeah,
this was,
right.
imagine in those years, like today there is so much advancement in consciousness, but in
Yeah.
Elizabeth's time, she was born in 1900. In those days, she brought all this wisdom to humanity,
Yeah.
that death does not exist.
Yeah.
Can you imagine like how much boldness she needed to bring messages like that? And Dr. Raymond Moody was the same. They both did the same thing at the same time. So it was very interesting. And I would just bump into these books, when I was a teenager. Because when I was 3 years old, I used to pray to God. I didn't know what, religion, God was. But I used to pray to God and I used to tell God that nobody should ever die. And that every disease
Yeah.
should find a cure.
Yeah, right.
Because I remember one day we were watching TV and my dad showed someone on TV who had AIDS. So I was like, what is AIDS? And he said, AIDS is a disease which has no cure. So if you have AIDS, you are going to die. And since that night, I used to pray every night to God that nobody should ever get AIDS and nobody should die, because I was so scared of it.
Yeah.
And that's why I was always seeking the answers, like what really happens after death.
Yeah.
And I got all those answers when I was a teenager. I was a morbid kid. When every other person was like, playing, adventuring, I was wondering about the deepest truths of the universe.
And
I
I think
believe
at that
the
age I
answers
was wondering
came to
about
me.
love.
Yeah.
I was
And
wondering
I was
about the
also
truths of
wondering
love.
about love.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe the answers came to me because I was really seeking them.
Absolutely. Yep. Yep. Well, fascinating. That's a good conversation for sure.
Did you stop
Thanks for
taping it?
I stopped now.
Yeah.